Great. Welcome everyone to this Opaque webinar, From Trust to Proof, the next generation of AI agent governance. My name is Jason Lazarski, Director of Growth at Opaque Systems. I'm on the front lines with highly regulated industries and customers like insurance companies, banks, government, as well as healthcare, right? Any large enterprise who has a large breadth of sensitive data, they want to get insights out of that sensitive data, and we provide them a trust layer to do so. And happily joined by Imran, who's the celebrity on this call. He's our Chief Platform Officer. For folks who don't know Imran, he's the creator of Agent Governance Toolkit. The Agent Governance Toolkit is nearly 5,000 GitHub stars and 1,000 plus contributors. He owns about 20 plus patents across AI systems, data platforms, and distributed infrastructure. He's a published researcher on agentic architecture. He's built the measurement frameworks the industry now cites when talking about agent governance. That's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, about the standards that we're creating. And then finally at CC Summit, Imran launched Trace and Agent Manifest. So these are open attestation standards that extend hardware measurements to agent runtime behavior. So Imran, nobody knows the problem and has worked on the problem longer than you. Take it away. What are we going to go over today?
Yeah, I think good to be here, and thanks, Jason, for all of the introductions. I think we have a lot to cover today, and I was just thinking maybe where do we start? I'll just start with my own personal story. Uh, 1 year back, I was really building a lot of AI services, me myself, like the way people have been doing it, and we were very happy building MCP servers and assistants and all of this stuff. But I think I had a question saying that, hey, what is still missing in the AI world? And that actually made me very curious. And in November, I started thinking about, hey, all good, but like, what if something goes wrong? And I think that is where the governance questions came in. And then fast forward, uh, 6 months from November to April, really went really deeper and built this governance layer, and which we shipped as part of Microsoft called Agent Governance Toolkit. It picked up momentum, and we are close to like 1 million downloads soon. And then I think then the next question for me was like, is it good enough? And then the answer was like, maybe no, and there's something more. And that is where I think I came across confidential AI space, and that's where the journey started. And then we have much bigger problem space to look into, and we have a lot of solutions also on the way.
Question for you, Emran, just to parlay a little bit off that. So in terms of today's approaches to AI governance, like why would you say they fall short, right? When these agents are taking actions potentially on sensitive data, with what you have available today, where is that shortfall?
A lot of I think let's start with without governance, there is a shortfall. Like you cannot go write the prompt saying that, hey, be good to me. The agents are not going to be good anymore. And then we have seen all the news, even last week's news where Hugging Face incident, right? So they are becoming more powerful, and which is good. Now comes the governance layer where we say, hey, I'm going to have policies. I'm going to have like records of all the stuff which you have been doing, and all good, all good. But I think the whole question is if your agents are super powerful, what is stopping them from changing the logs themselves? What is stopping them from changing the policies which is going to govern them? So I think we do have a lot of systems being built to control them, but the agents are becoming powerful to even override those controls. That worries me.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah. So what I think personally, and I think this is something which I covered yesterday in AIF MCP release party also. Governance is good. We all need governance. There is a no question for the governance not being in the place, but we really have to start thinking about different use cases. And I think if your use cases include regulated industries or something which is like really confidential data which is super important, you cannot stop at the software layer, and that is where the hardware guarantees comes into picture. Like if I'm going to use a policy to govern my agent, that policy has to be uh, taken care of. And how do you take care of them? That you have to prove it that hey, this policy can never be tampered with because this is guaranteed by the hardware. And that's how I think some of the areas which I have been recently working on for the last 2 months goes there. I see you have a question, or maybe I'll just
Yeah,
continue.
No, no. I was just going to make a point, and this is what I hear on the front lines with working with highly regulated industries, where it's like, what's the difference between asking an agent to follow policy versus actually enforcing it, right? And I think that's the big takeaway from this call today.
Yeah. So a couple of things that comes to my mind. When you ask anyone today, like, hey, what guardrails do you have in place? First of all, we don't have standardization, so everyone will have a different answer. Like someone, there are popular frameworks, open source frameworks like AGT is one of them, Agent Governance Toolkit, and people are like, hey, we are using it, and that gives us all the guarantees. Or maybe there are a lot of other ones like Nemo guardrails, which people might be using. But I think that gives partially one answer. The answer is, hey, I know what I am allowing my agents to do. But I think the second question is super important. It's like, can you prove it that this is indeed happening? And I think that is where there is a huge gap, which like all of us have to work together and fix it. And then we have taken an initiative, and then a bunch of initiatives. We announced a bunch of them during our cloud computing summit also, and uh, and that's the path which I think is super important for all of us to work together. Maybe I'll take 5 minutes or maybe 3 minutes to talk about like what I have been thinking and like what we have been doing at the Opaque systems, the startup I work for, and also the open source org which we have introduced in the confidential compute. All of them coming together and like what we have been doing. So first of all, hardware guarantees, really hardware guarantees. So this is what we have, which is hey, we have the foundation. This is where think of it like an enclave where you can really host your models and agents, and then we can really control what goes in and what goes out, and then we can have a receipt of like really what really happened, and then you can prove it. Something like this, which says you know what, we just don't want to rely on saying that hey, we have the right things in place and maybe the right things are going to happen, but we do have a proof where it ran, what ran, which rules had. And this is important. This is something which the auditors really care about, and like not just auditors, like your CISO, your security experts, audit teams inside and outside, everyone really cares about.
Actually,
uh,
Emran, if you wouldn't mind going back just a slide or two, I just wanted to just harp a little bit on the framework. Go back one more slide, because I think this is critical, at least for my customers on the front lines and the framework that they think of confidential AI, and it's that whole before, during, and after framework, right? And so before anything happens with their workload, there's an integrity check, right? Think of this as your pre-flight checklist. Make sure everything's kosher, everything is attested, all those measurements align before anything happens, right? And if it's something wasn't aligned, it would fail, hard stop. That's when the enforcement comes into play. Then, during execution, right, everything is happening at runtime well encrypted, and all your policies come along and are enforced. And then after the fact, and we're going to show you just this in a moment, you're going to get an audit, right? You're going to get an evidence pack that says everything that was supposed to run ran the way it should be, which is it's massive. Like think of this as your digital receipt for AI. And this digital receipt can be passed along to your internal legal compliance and external regulator for my high tech customers, their enterprise customers, where they're using their sensitive enterprise data, customer data in their workloads. So this mental model of before, during, and after has been huge for my customers as they think about confidential AI and AI enablement going forward.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things which I have been focusing on since last 2 months is how do we actually go and meet the builders? So not just the customers, actually the builders who are building the agents today. And this is where a lot of open source initiatives we have been working on comes together, which tease up all of these things, the AGT, the confidential AI, and all of these things together, saying that, hey, when you deploy an agent in production, how can you guarantee that 30 days later it's the same agent which you deploy on day one? That is where we came up with this project called Agent Manifest. It's open source, fits very much in the verify the agent before category. Do all this hashing and everything, and then you can really verify this is the agent you're deploying in production. 30 days later is the same. If not, I think you can take the second thing which we have been working on is if your agents are going to take actions, calling into MCP servers or talking to other agents using A2A. we bring the confidentiality there. So there are projects which we have been actively working on called confidential MCP and confidential A2A, which helps in the middle box and force confidentially. Then the one more project which we are collaborating with our partners, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, and a lot more, is standardizing this entire format. Like, hey, we really want to tell you what actually happened during all of these runs. This format itself is something which we are calling trace. So this all fits together, and to make it very easy for the builders, what we are saying is like you don't always have to start with the hardware. Start with the software. We have different level of verifications and validations. Starting from the software, just run it in your box, get things working, and then once you're ready to deploy in the production, all the hardware guarantees can come. You don't have to change the code. So this is something which we are envisioning, and we are like have a lot of things already which you can try today.
Question for you, Imran, and
Hmm.
this goes back to a point you made. Why was it important that this be built on open standards rather than proprietary technology? Why is that so important?
I think the two things which plays key role here. One is, hey, proof not promises. Like, hey, how can you prove yourself that you are like what you say is right? And I think this is where I think the open source coming. Like, hey, you look at the code, and I think that's the answer. I think that is something which is happening even beyond some of the projects we have been working on. If you see the Google and Apple example, how they completely built the security layer for helping Apple use Gemini for some of the experiences, they said, hey, we can prove it through open sourcing some of the libraries for the researchers. Second thing is standardization, not just open sourcing the source code. What we really want to do it is, we got the membership with Appia and AIF. We are part of COSI, and we really want to take some of these projects, graduate them, and make it part of the standards. So that it's not something which like we own and it's proprietary, even if it is open source. It's something which is part of the standard, and then everyone uses it very much like MCP and E2A. These are the two main reasons.
Awesome, awesome.
Let's keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So let's keep moving.
I kind of touch base on all of these projects. I'm not going to talk about this. HT, we all know, not going to be spending a lot of time. Only the good thing is like the number of people trying it out has been like really increasing. With it over in the weekend itself, I think it became from 4,900 to 5,400 or plus something. It's going very well. I think this one is the last slide, maybe, where we can spend a lot of time. How all of these things fit together. Like, hey, uh, standards, we really need standards. Standards is where I think we can all can align, and we need the standard bodies like APIA, AIF, COSI to come together and like really support us. And this is where some of our open source projects are going to graduate into AGD, Agent Manifest, Confidential MCP. We work with our partners so that we are verifying all of these things indeed work. So, for example, when I talk about confidential MCP, we are testing it with Intel and AMD and NVIDIA and all of the hardwares and all the hyperscalers, cloud providers, Google and Amazon, trying to make sure that this is indeed something which works. Then, obviously, we work very closely with some of the standard bodies like OAPS, top 10, saying that, hey, is it really making sense? Like what you have been saying versus what we have been building? I think, is it like really aligning? So this is like all comes together to make sure we answer the question. The question is, can you first control the agents? And second, prove that you control the agent. And this is all which actually helps you answer both questions. And then obviously to help this, we have policies today, and we have policies coming in, and then we have this entire hardware guarantees coming from Opaque systems, which is like if you want to go and deploy your agents in production, you're a regulated industry. You don't really have to worry about all of these things. Maybe you have a commercial offering which supports all of these things, and that's where Opaque plays a key role. This is the slide. I think I expect some questions from you.
Yeah. Question for me before we open up to the audience. This looks like a lot. Is, in your opinion, is there a starting point, a low friction, maybe entry point where I can get some early wins internally for my team, um, to drive this bigger picture here? Like, would you recommend? I know I have an opinion on it, but do you have an opinion on maybe where to start?
Yeah, I think that's a question which everyone asks me. Even yesterday, I think when I was doing this confidential MCP session for the AIF, I think the question in the room was like, where do we start? Where do we start? And if you see, we are not directly starting from production. We are starting from a local laptop, like your own machine where you're building it, and you are a builder, and that's where you start. So some of the projects which we have today in the open source are a good starting point. Like if you just want to try out policies, for example, just go to AGT, try out the policies. If you want to try out like, hey, I want to create a manifest of like my agent and like what I'm going to deploy and verify it, you can start with the agent manifest. And they all have like very basic, simple, quick start documents. And you can just quickly get started, run it in your box, get comfortable, and it's the same code which is going to run in the production too.
Awesome. No, thank you for breaking down those elements. And then from the front lines and talking to my customers, the most common and important agent surface that they're telling me to secure is MCP. And I think that's a great starting point as well. So, obviously that's a huge leakage vector for sensitive data when agents are making those calls and sensitive data is in that equation. So MCP is a really good starting point. We have a quick start guide as well that we'll send out to the audience so they can get up and running and demonstrate that value. In like 10 minutes, I think if you were to go through it quickly, Imran. But I think confidential MCP and MCP is a great starting point as well.
Absolutely. I think you have some demo, Jason, to share.
Yeah, I have demo. I'm going to throw, as I'm transitioning to the demo, I want to throw one question at you, and it
Okay.
has to do with performance, right? Because this trust layer is additive, it sounds like it should slow things down, right? But what's the real overhead of enforcing policies on every single tool call as we're describing?
Number one question. I think this come up in all of the talks I'm part of, and I think this is the number one question. So I think I go back to the same thing. Uh, First principle. My first principle is we are building. We are good at building deterministic systems, and models are the only non-deterministic systems which have come in our life. We don't really have to make the entire world non-deterministic. We have to still continue with the deterministic. So one approach which we took as part of building all of these policies for AGT and the CMCP is we have deterministic policies. CEDAR is the backend, and since we have determinism in a non-deterministic world, the performance overhead is very low, very, very low. We have done experiments after experiments for the last 6 months, and it's in like milliseconds, fraction of a millisecond. So I think it's not bad.
Great. No, thank you. And I think you're right. I think that is the most frequently asked questions that we get from prospects and customers who are going and starting their journey with confidential AI 100%. And we've come a long way in the 3 years that I've been here. So super excited. And there's published benchmarks that we can send this group as well. So yeah, let's go into the demo. So on my screen right now is the Opaque confidential AI platform. I'm going to show you what this looks like in practice, starting with this trust page. So starting with the evidence that you'll get for every workload and every agent that you're deploying within confidential AI and Opaque. So in terms of this demo that you're seeing here, it's an employee HR assist workflow. So an AI agent helping employees navigate HR policies, benefits, and requests. That's been pretty common as a starting point in my customers as well, taking kind of some low risk HR data. So think of the sensitive data as compensation records, performance data, personal employee information, right? All that sensitive data. Exactly the kind of workload where you need to be able to prove to HR, legal, and compliance what the agent did and what it didn't do. So everything I'm about to show you is generated automatically at the end of every workflow run. There's no manual prep. There's no report to compile. So on this trust page, starting at the top, you're going to see two things. You're going to see the hardware attestation. So the enclaves verified before any sensitive data entered the workflow, right? The silicone checked itself, right? So the hardware is attested. Then the platform attestation over here, this is the Opaque software stack running inside that enclave. So all those measurements check out as well. And so as I scroll down, you're also going to see policy enforcement results. So every policy that governed this run is recorded as well. So what was enforced, what was allowed, what was blocked. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here so you can see some of the visuals. So I'm going to click on the workflow attestation. So we're just kind of drilling down into this. The first thing you see is the node visual. So this makes it a little bit more concrete. So each node in the workflow is a step the agent took. So you can see this very visually within this Canvas interface. You can see the full execution path. So which tools were called and what sequence, what data flowed through each step. This is your audit trail. It's not as a flat log, but as a visual map of exactly what happened. So as I scroll down even further, we can go into the specific workload, right? So what you're seeing here is an attestation record for the specific workflow, not just the platform. So, what this run is, the agent, the data, the measurement tells you exactly what was running inside the enclave at the moment sensitive data entered. If anything was different from what was approved, different model, different configuration, different policy bundle, this measurement would not match and the workload would not have been allowed to run, right? So that goes into that enforcement that Imran was talking with before. So at that moment of action, it would fail. The last thing I want to walk you through quickly is just a quick look at the policies. So this is the policy layer. So these are the rules that govern this execution. So these are written in Cedar, your rules, not ours. Every policy evaluated during this run is here, what was allowed, what was blocked, what triggered a redaction or something like that. Every decision is logged in this tamper-proof evident chain with a timestamp and exactly what the policy was that enforced it. So this is the answer to, can we prove the agent only did what it was authorized to do? Yes, and it's right here. Not an application log that can be modified. It's a hardware sealed record. So what you're seeing here is a full chain: context, receipt, hardware proof, node level execution, policy enforcement. Every enterprise AI deployment should be able to produce this. Most cannot today. And that's the gap we're closing here at Opaque Systems with Imran. Any questions with anything? Imran, anything you want to add to this demo?
No, I love this demo. I love this demo. I think I was telling someone yesterday, someone asked me this question, like, what made you jump into, like, from governance into the confidential AI space? And I was like, okay, maybe this is the thing. Um, Looking at into the governance space and looking into the confidential AI space, and I was like, okay, maybe there is scope for like really bringing the whole all of these two different worlds together. We need governance, we need confidential AI, and like how do we actually bring all of these things together? And this is where some of the things which you see and some of the things which you're going to see in future, I think really matters more. One thing which I have been really focusing on for last few weeks, and we have been posting in our newsletter also, is called model weight protection. Like how? So going beyond the agents, like bringing this all beauty of like whatever governance we have been working on, and bring the same governance to models, not just agents. And what does it even mean? So we have a lot of goodness which is coming in. So I would see more beautiful visualizations and demos in future, but I love it.
When you and we do have a couple questions from the audience I'll get to in a second. When you say model weights, are you specifically talking about open source, or are you also talking about um, um, the commercial models as well?
Both.
Okay.
See, my perspective on this one is frontier for sure. I think the frontier models, they really, if they are deploying something into the regulated customers, they want to make sure the model weights are protected from access outside the enclave. But open weight too. Open weight, I think, is important. I think open weight is not really open, so to speak. You cannot just download anything in the world and then just run it. You want the verifiability, and that is very important. If you are going to give access to your important data to these open weight models, you want to ensure that the model running in your system is indeed the one which you downloaded and is prompt has be like all the way you can verify till the supply chain. And that is something which I have been working on. We have been talking about it in our newsletter. We just launched something today which actually gives you a way to you download open weight models and do the complete verification. So that's like I've been super excited about that.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting that these same fundamentals that we're going over
Yes.
also apply to the model weights for both open source
Yes.
and commercial. That's great. So let's go into a couple questions. The first one I have is, do we have to rip out our existing AI stack to adopt these, or can agent manifest and CMCP layer on top of what we're already running today?
Or you don't have to do anything and you don't have to rip anything. That's the beauty of like all of the things which you have been building, like they all are additive. Like for example, you want to just use the policies, you can bring in the policies into the existing agent framework. You want to bring in the confidential MCP in your existing stuff. You have MCP servers, you have agents, you can just bring the confidential MCP in the middle. If you really want to have the agent to agent communications more hardened, you can bring the confidential A to A in the middle. So you're not going to really uh, change any of your stuff which you already have working. You're just going to bring more governance, more control, more trust, more proof in the middle of all of these things. That's the beauty.
Great. And the next question is another A to A. question. So how are you addressing agent-to-agent interactions from different organizations? Mutual authentications, agents should prove to other agents who's working for, and it has the power to interact with other agents for a specific task.
Yeah, so we have been investing in like multiple different uh, areas for agent-to-agent communication. Obviously, we love A2A from Google, so we're not like reinventing the wheel. We are just saying, hey, what all do we bring to the table in order to make this agent-to-agent communication good? So one thing goes to the confidential A2A, which we have been working on. We are announcing soon, which brings the hardware guarantees to agent-to-agent communication, so that you are indeed talking to a verifiable agent. Then obviously we have done some research in past, which is like, hey, agent, when it talks to another agent, the other agent has to indeed first prove that via identity. So that each of them should have an identity that, hey, this is indeed me, and you can go verify my credentials. We're working on the credentials as part of COSI work stream 4, which is trying to say that, hey, when an agent discover another agents, what credentials we really care about. We're also working on trust score. A trust score says that, hey, when you meet another agent, you can also have some notion of trust score, which says that how have you been so far? Like what you have been in, how much is your trust score? Like how people trust, other agents trust you. And there are a lot of different projects. They all come together to give you the, I think the North Star is we want to have an internet of agents. And I think, these are all the building blocks for internet of agents.
Excellent. So I think we have time for two more questions. The first one being, is hardware-backed governance something every AI agent needs or only certain use cases?
Not everyone. I think it's start with the software. That's one of the reasons we have been focusing on the open source. Start from there, go try it out. And if you're a regulated industry, and if you really, or if your data is super important from getting leaked out or being used for the training, then hardware based guarantees. But if you don't fall into any of these things, you still want all of the things which we are building, and you can still use all of them, but you don't really have to go deploy them in the any of those hardwares which we are talking about.
Yeah, I will just harp on that a little bit. Where once you add sensitive data to the equation, it's absolutely necessary. I also want to make a point too. I see a world soon where confidential compute will be regular compute, and all of this will be hardware attested. So I don't think we're far from that. But obviously today, once sensitive data is involved, I think that hardware attestation is much needed. So last question, and then we'll close here. What should organizations start doing today to prepare for verifiable AI?
Very good question. I would say use a project which we have been working on. I think that will be a very
Mm.
easy answer to start with. Obviously, I think the if you want to pick three projects which you should really go try it out today, Agent Manifest, because you really want to guarantee 30 days later the agent which you deploy in production is the same agent. Start using Trace. If you are using any of the governance framework, and if the Trace is not integrated, work with us. We can work with those agent frameworks to ensure Trace is integrated. Trace is something which is going to bring the verifiability, which the auditors are really going to ask, and try the confidential MCP. That is going to give you the really comfort that, hey, your agents are talking to MCP servers confidently on only things which you really want to. I think these are the things which I would say go try it out today. And maybe
Excellent.
Jason, if you want to add.
No, I think that's a perfect answer and a perfect closing, remark. And I just want to stress, we'll follow up with a recording of this to everyone. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We do a lot of handholding with our customers, with our prospects, right? We want to show value internally to stakeholders, and we really get in there with you. So with questions, with suggestions, with comments, just reach back out to that email, and we'll follow up with you guys. It's such a critical problem to solve for, and it's really some exciting times. So we appreciate everyone's time, and look forward to hopefully connecting with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Imran. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.